Welcome to the Heart Rate Variability Podcast. Each week we talk about heart rate variability and how it can be used to improve your overall health and wellness. Please consider the information in this podcast for your informational use and not medical advice. Please see your medical provider to apply any of the strategies outlined in this episode. Heart Rate Variability Podcast is a production of Optimal LLC and Optimal HRV. Check us out at optimalhrv.com. Please enjoy the show. Welcome, friends, to the Heart Rate Variability Podcast, to the 100th episode of the Heart Rate Variability Podcast. We're going old school today. I have my friend and co-founder and fellow Heart Rate Variability Podcast host, Mr. Jeff Summers, joining the show. Kind of feels like a reunion tour, Jeff. We haven't been on just you and I for a second or two here. So I'm excited to celebrate 100 with you, buddy.
Triple digits. Who'da thunk it, my friend?
I think the average podcast quits after 7 or 8 episodes. So
is that right?
There's not a huge lifespan for most. So you say a lot about me, but persistence, I am.
I was going to say, it says a lot about your work ethic and persistence. That is for sure. It's good to be back, man. It's been a long time. I don't know when the last time I was on. I know there's been tons and tons of really impressive and interesting guests. But I'm happy to be here for the 100th to commemorate the milestone here with you, Matt.
Absolutely. Just a shout out to both Dave and Ina as well. We tried to get all 4 of us on for this episode, and quickly that scheduling nightmare was not good. That may happen for the 200th episode to get us all 4 a free hour. But I just shout out. I know Dave's done some solo hosting, and Ina's been a co-host along the way as well. So I just wanted, before we get started, Jeff, give them a huge shout out for getting us to 100.
That's it. You said it. Too bad they can't be here, but we're lucky to have them as part of the journey. There's no doubt about that.
Absolutely.
That's it. So, it's been a long time since I've been on, and so I'm excited to be back, Matt. But obviously we've got lots happened. Yes. In 100 podcast episodes, both in the world, in our personal lives, but, more importantly, in the world of HRV as a whole.
Yeah.
So, and would love to hear you just sort of reflect on, what's happened since we started this in 2020. Was that right?
Yeah.
Is that so? It's 100 episodes has taken us 36 months. That's not so bad,
not too bad.
Something like that. So, maybe we start there. It's been a long time. What's happened over the last 3 years in HRV research, technology, our app, all those kinds of things that are noteworthy for you?
Well, one, we can leave the house. That's nice.
That's nice. That's a pretty big change. That's noteworthy.
Yep. So, I think, it's interesting because I think both you and I are probably the worst to actually assess this in an objective way. But it seems like, even though HRV is the water we both swim in daily, that it's out there more. That there's more information about heart rate variability in the world. Though I still feel like, we're still at the start of this journey. So as when we first start out, obviously we got the podcast, Heart Rate Variability Podcast. So there wasn't a whole lot going on in this space. And so, especially specifically around HRV, other good podcasts out there, but it was like HRV and other stuff. And sure. I think we've done
training, mostly.
Exactly. I think if you ask, could you fill 100 or so hours with one biometric? The answer is yes. I also have like another 15 episodes already recorded. So we've got proof you can talk about a single biometric for 115 or so episodes. And my goal is to keep coming out every week with a new one. So, I've seen it it's
Thought for a second
spread.
there, you're going to say it's your goal to come out with another book. Sorry.
No. Well, there might be one in the works. So I'm not the first author on that, which is, I know, good news for you. But yeah, it just gives it, it's growing. I think, we're in a mental health crisis in a lot of ways in our country and our world right now. So I think the focus on stress and trauma has escalated. I think heart rate variability is a small part of that overall discussion. And I can't see it becoming smaller as we continue to progress. The fact you can measure and quantify your stress response, your overall health and well-being, that is only going to, I think, become more and more in the mainstream as time goes on.
Yep. Yeah, no, that's right. It's amazing to me, just anecdotally, to hear from folks in my life unrelated to what we do for a living that have started to talk about heart rate variability. And, a lot of that is because of the Apple Watches of the world and the Oura Rings and those kinds of things have embedded it into their technology. So all of a sudden people say, hey, what is that? They may not know exactly what it is. They may not know exactly what to do to improve it or, and how it should impact or inform their lifestyles, but they know what it is and they've heard about it. And 3 years ago, that was not the case.
Right. And then one of the reasons we started this podcast is for those that have heard about it, but want to know 100 or so hours more about it. Wanted to give them that spot to hopefully help bring, the smart voices in the field and just our thinking around this to folks. So yeah, it's out there. I just got done with the book, a really good book. And it's like, I wonder if heart rate variability is going to come up. We hit the vagus nerve in this book, didn't quite get to HRV. So, even what I find is interesting is even if a book, there's books like, The Heartbeat of Business or, Heart Rate Variability, the ones I've been a part of, talk specifically about this, you're seeing it mentioned more and more in the kind of mainstream literature. And when I say that, I mean things that not are in peer-reviewed journal articles, but are in making it into books and even more popular books. Sometimes you only get to autonomic nervous system, other times you get to ventral vagal functioning, and then heart rate variability often gets pushed in there as well. And I can only see that increasing as we go on, just as the research sort of explodes all around us.
Yep, that's it. And more day-to-day conversations are happening with people. They're out looking for it. They want to read about it. They want to learn about it. As just like anything, as the market expands, there's more entries, whether it's products, information, books, people talk, podcasts, whatever it is. There's an itch that needs to be scratched. There's somebody that's going to find a way to do it, and that's exciting. I mean, it just validates what we set out to do 3+ years ago, is becoming more and more interesting to more and more people, which is fantastic.
Yeah, it's fun. It's fun to be on that wave. That is the exciting piece.
That's it. So, talk a little bit about your personal experiences as we've explored this. You obviously brought this to my attention 4+ years ago, whatever it was. So you've known about it for 5, 6. Talk a little bit about your personal experiences and sort of the insights that you gained as you dug into this to the point where you've authored 2 books and have 115+ podcast episodes and all of that.
Yeah, I mean, there's a few things. COVID just happened. As we were planning our launch with Optimal HRV, COVID happened. It just, I think it turned things upside down in good and bad ways around this. I think that a lot of people started to pay a little bit more attention to their health, mental health, while we were under this incredible amount of stress at the same time. So, it's kind of, I just wonder if we jumped into an alternative reality where COVID didn't happen, where would everything be? I just love to peek in there and see what was going on in that alternative reality. But, I think for the most part, my biggest insight of talking, especially in the biofeedback arena, and these guests have been, I think some of my favorite episodes is I somehow got in the position where some of the pioneers of HRV biofeedback showed up on the podcast. These are the dudes that were talking to folks in Russia early on, and old pictures of their machinery and continuing to do good work. So, I mean, on one hand, it's just an absolute privilege that people trust the podcast and see it as a valuable thing. And I can we can give them a venue to tell their story. To me, it's like, I always love the second episode where we reconnect with folks and talk about something specific, but talking to the pioneers about just their journey has just been a spectacular gift. Real highlight of my career, and definitely my work in HRV. The other thing that I find really insightful, like that I didn't, as my learning curve grew around heart rate variability, and our audience has watched that occur over time. There's no way you can, I think I started out pretty strong, but 100 episodes later and a lot of learning done in between episodes, it's one of the things that is the big takeaway is how soon we hit the limits of our understanding. How soon, because we're kind of pushing the edge of neurobiology and autonomic functioning, is we hit up to the questions. Like, my favorite is, what's a dorsal vagal response? Some people think that can be a gradual thing where you're a little low energy. Other people think it's an emergency brake and it's either all the way on or all the way off. And we really hit up to these important walls of knowledge, and we can speculate what's on the other side. And HRV fills in a lot of the blanks behind that wall, and that's growing. But there's still really exciting questions to be answered, and that's where I really am excited to kind of see what comes next with that, because we often hit this with the experts in the world that join us as guests. We don't know this yet. It's like, okay, and we can be part of that conversation of learning more about the human condition, the human stress response, mental, physical, social, emotional, cognitive health. And, it's rare you can push up against a knowledge limitation and help fill in the blanks. So I'm excited. We have 100 episodes and probably a lot more to talk about moving forward.
That's for sure. I mean, we've seen that personally with some of the studies that we've been a part of that have come back with results that were very different than what we expected. And, kind of got us thinking in a way that, we sort of never thought we would. Right. And
exactly.
So, there's just more and more of that's going to continue to come about.
Yeah.
So you started to get in on it a little bit, but you talk about what over the 100, that we've done so far, 115 that you've recorded, some yet to be released. What do you think were maybe the most impactful episodes, and most popular? What were people most interested in? And for you, what were some of the most impactful episodes to host?
Yeah, great question. The most popular seem to be the basics. When you look at that now, we also covered some of the basics early on. So if you go back to episode 1 is our most popular episode, you can list about 3 or 4 reasons why that happens. I've really been happy that our Heartbeat of Business series, really, if you look at any span of time, that the most recent episodes are the most. So some of our most popular. In fact, it seems like people are jumping in halfway through. I imagine they listen to a little and then hopefully jump back to episode 1 or the first episode of the book series. But so those have been I really find it that people are still looking for, and this is the hard thing about having 100 episodes is, where do you jump in, right? And I have this trouble with podcasts too. I get
That's right.
excited. I'm really nerding out about AI right now. So like I'm looking for podcasts to help my learning curve. And like, do I jump back to 3 years ago? Doesn't really seem to make sense. Is there like a chat GBT one that I can start out with? So it's always good to say, hey, go back to episode one, get the basics with us. I also, I kind of like these are just kind of maybe not our best episodes, though I think they were pretty good. I like the ones where we're just talking as a team. It's funny, we're all so busy with Optimal that have it talking to you, like, because we do this as friends too, right? Like
Of
we,
course.
we can sit and talk, whether it's about basketball, sports, Optimal, whatever it is, for hours on end, just because we're friends. And then as our friendship and professional relationship with Ina and Dave have evolved as well. It's like kind of just taking time out to sit with you all and connect as friends and as colleagues and as folks working on a common vision to bring this more and more to people's attention and provide people great tools. So, while again, I don't know, I don't want to say like our episodes are the best, that they're in some ways the most enjoyable because it's a unique time where it's like we don't have a meeting agenda, we don't have any of this stuff. We're talking about resonance frequency breathing today, and to talk
Yep.
to Nina about that, I know I have the world's expert or one of the top five, and she's also just a great friend as well. So I kind of
Yep.
treasure those as the top of my list.
Yeah. Yeah. I hear you. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And I think there's a lot of impactful episodes, I think,
Yeah.
when you think about the guests that we brought on, are there any that stick out to you in terms of the conversation you had that was sort of like, you know, mind blown, man, that I hadn't thought about things that way, or that really added a lot of context to something that had question marks around, those kinds of things?
Yeah, I mean, I would think Gewurz and others that have been sort of those Pepper, though those sort of people that have been in here for 30
Yeah.
years. I
Yeah.
mean, those have really
The
been, yeah,
founding
the
members.
founding people of this side, because you don't get talked to Freud, right? You don't get talked to Maslow's been dead for God knows how long, right?
Yep.
And even some of the like other people that are still around, they're not necessarily accessible in this. And so to just like I said, it's just been a huge honor. Like as humbling as I'll get out to be the one, because I'm new to this. I'm nobody in their field. Or
Sure.
at least start out there. I'm so excited to go to the AAPB conference because I consider those folks friends now. Like they were just strangers at a table in nice suits before. Now, like I know them, I consider them, friends in many ways. And so it's just like to be honored to hear their stories and for us to be able to document those stories that I'm not saying they're not documented in other places, but I don't know. I think there's an honor to that. This is the history. And I think too often when you're in a stream of scientific evolution, sometimes you don't take a step back and say, how do we get here? And as sort of a newer person to the field, I can't call myself the next generation because I got gray all over the place now. But like
At least you have hair.
yeah, to bring the new people in here to connect them with these stories, it's humbling, it's an honor, and it's a hell of a lot of fun at the same time. So yeah, I have to pinch myself a little bit that I'm the one being able to do this, which yeah, I enjoy.
Absolutely. No, that's great. So, we talked a little bit about the past and sort of, what's happened over the last 3 years. What's coming? Let's take a look at the future, and especially now that we're so ingrained in the space,
Yeah.
and it's part of our professional life and daily life. What are the emerging trends? What are the new developments that you're keeping an eye on, that you think, sort of the listener who maybe is just learning about us or is sort of along for the ride may be interested in?
Yeah. So, I mean, I think the things that I'm really taking a look at is, honestly, and you know the answer to this question before you ask
I
it,
do, of course, I do.
the AI and deep learning. When you talk about heart rate variability, I think that one of the big limitations and why in some ways we have so many questions is I don't think our population norms are great, but I don't have anything else to compare them to. Like Voss did a study. Thank you, Voss, for doing that study. That sort of been the cornerstone of some of this. I know there's been others out there, but what's the population norm for an 8-year-old? Like, I haven't seen that. Doesn't mean it's hasn't been done since I Googled it last. What about somebody who's living with diabetes in their 40s? Like, could we get that specific? So with all the wearables out there, and I'm so excited that we're going to be a part of this conversation, we're collecting so much data. And if you've ever Googled what RMSSD, the equation algorithm behind it, try and turn that into a sentence. It's even saying the acronym's hard enough, much less looking at the equation. So there's a lot of complexity and a lot of data in the HRV space. So what is great to take a whole bunch of information and give it to you in a very usable way? The answer to that is the AI that's developed really in the mainstream in the last 6 months or so, since ChatGPT 3 really hit the mainstream. Like,
Nope.
that is that I tried it out because I'm like just astounded. You created our questions for today. So if you like the questions that we're asking, yeah, we asked ChatGPT. Here's the prompt I said. What are some good discussion questions for the 100th episode of the Heart Rate Variability Podcast with Jeff Summers and Matt Bennett? And it spit out like 20 questions. So I deleted them and kept my favorite, but unbelievable. So it looks at our podcast. It looks at the show notes of our podcast, and it comes up with perfect questions. Maybe 5 of them were kind of and then I was like, we don't have time to do up these 15. So I cut some out and like it did. So take every piece of HRV data we've ever collected, with some, sorting out there ahead of time. Well, what do we want to look at? Can summarize that, can put these really complex algorithms, low frequency, high frequency, SDNN, RMSSD, all these max min, all these together. And, where I'm really interested with a little bit of personal information and learning on you, give you a level of insight and feedback that I don't think any algorithm could or can, or any piece of code could or can. So we have this real connection to start to, in some ways, mine this data in a way that I really believe is that wall I talk about that we keep hitting is going to knock down that wall. We're going to hit a learning curve in an evolving science that's going to start to really answer some of these key questions that underline our humanity, at a time that this same technology, a lot of people are worried about threats humanity. So I'm more optimistic on this side of it, but at the same time, I really think that we've got opportunity in the biometrics arena to really improve human health. And if StarNet doesn't destroy us all, that's going to be a good thing, right? It'll be a good thing to learn this along the way. So that's where, you look at what's in front of us. I think we were able to get an affordable reader to the market, which has been a 4-year struggle for you and I believe at this point, of me constantly Googling and trying to find something. We were able to do that. So that helps. I think we'll hopefully, if AI can start to create better hardware, we'll get better sensors out there where we can collect other biometrics as well, or pair with an Apple Watch or those sort of things to say, okay, we've got skin coherence, we got all these, we got heart rate, we maybe have some neuro signals, and what's all this mean? This is how you should plan your day, and give that based on you. Maybe it reads your calendar so it knows what your day is and helps you do that and gives you suggestions along the way. So I would just say hold on, because things are going to take a huge jump. I was thinking about this today, Jeff, because we were talking about a little bit about this yesterday. It's like I was old enough to learn to type on a manual typewriter.
Word processor. I think
Yeah.
in seventh grade, I learned to type on a word processor.
Yeah, all I gotta say is that's why we're in separate. I really think that's the cutoff of generations, because like it was just like that type, because you had to have this little white piece of paper and you had to go back and then you hit and you deleted it. It was horrible. It was horrible. Plus I was uncoordinated and still am. So like you got this. So the analogy I'm using is that's where it's like going from that to buying a desktop today and opening up Word. It's like having PowerPoint when you used to use the overhead projector. It's like having PowerPoint now. Like, but we're taking that jump instead of going from me learning on a manual typewriter in 1999 to, the technology we have now
90.
in 2023, that evolved over time. I really think what's happening now is if you don't use AI, you're going to miss this huge jump. That's how big of a jump that I believe it's going to be. So yeah, hold on, because it's really amazing stuff. So I'm excited about it if it doesn't destroy us, but we always have Arnold to come back to time too.
Yeah, exactly. In those sci-fi movies, we somehow managed to come back and win. So
Exactly.
let's hope that's the reality.
We want the good Arnold, not the bad Arnold, right?
Exactly. Which
the one that somehow ages
what
even
was
though
it?
it's a robot. So who knows?
Yeah, exactly. That's right. You said it. So, if you're thinking about, the application of HRV on mental health, stress management, performance optimization, all the things we talk about in the future, and AI specifically, how is that emerging technology that you just talked about going to be applied to our arena?
Yeah. So I really think we're hitting something. And when I say I think we're hitting something, there is a speculation from me on this that I really think is going to be an interesting thing, because I think, unfortunately, because the stakes are just different, but fortunately, because if you have a role model, it's a really good thing because you're learning from other people. But the adaptation in athletics of biometrics far outpaces where I think it could have even a bigger societal impact, which is the mental health or healthcare arena. But it's always great to have role models. I think what athletics, and I'd love to get your thought on this, Jeff, as I know you're also a sports fan, is that there's an interesting mix now is I think biometrics and this focus on recovery, on one hand, is really getting people to have longer and longer careers. Like you look at an example of LeBron James.
Yeah,
You look at Tom Brady, and you look at how much money they're able to spend on their not only their workouts, but on their recovery as well. LeBron probably spends more in a year than I'll ever make in my lifetime just on his recovery. I think where we're hitting now is trying to find this balance between I think are at risk maybe of pushing too far on the recovery process. And you're seeing this again with athletics. And I'm wondering what we're seeing is back in the day, you had and you got to kind of dig for these stories because they're not incredibly well documented, but certain professional athletes would, play a game, score 30, 40 points, and then go out and have a 12-pack, right? there was this,
or worse.
there was a great enjoyment of Daryl Strawberry is a well-documented one, so I feel okay to throw out the name. Seemingly high as all get out and pitched some amazing games. Other folks, we may have had a really good basketball player a few years back here in Denver, and just kind of was going out partying every night, going to the club, still showed up and performed really well. So, what I think is the interesting thing is we focus so much on healthy behaviors in the professional athletes, and you have to do both short-term and long-term with that. But then how many games a year can Kawhi Leonard actually play, right? If you're red, do you take the day off? So I think that there's like this interesting thing that I think we're going to be dealing with is, I think if you did HRV assessments on the population right now, you could probably argue that 80% of us shouldn't show up to work tomorrow because we're a mess. Right? I mean, that's just what I see in society right now is we are struggling. Yet if 80% don't show up for work for 3 or 4 weeks, our society collapses.
We got a problem.
It's like, how do we handle this? And I think that's a question of, a balance. That I'm not saying we push too far athletically for recovery, because we started out at such a non-focus on that, and the question now is, do you ever play injured again, right? Will we ever have one of those stories where someone comes out,
the sprained ankle comes out and hits the game-winning shot,
a broken leg, right? Obviously concussions, you need to sit out, right?
Sure.
Don't make fun of anybody that got hit in the head.
No.
But you got all these stories of I think Larry Bird basically didn't have a back that moved for many years and just kept putting up.
John Elway played years without an ACL.
Yeah, exactly. And you just kept going through that, but your career ended much earlier. So
correct.
I think
that's it.
How do we extend while performing in a healthy way in the short term, even if we're having a red day, even if our HRV is telling us, I need a 2-week vacation, but I can't take a 2-week vacation. How do we get some balance there? And I think you can even hear, I don't talk about that very succinctly because I think so many of us have said, hey, over here, let's pay attention to recovery. If you don't ever show up to work, you got to balance that out. So I really think that, I need to get better talking about it, but that's where I think we're going to be talking a lot more in the podcast too about how do we perform at our best if we're got a week in red, because sometimes we're in red for a week, because of everything going on in life, but we still have to show up for our family. We still have to show up for our work or our performance, whatever that might be. So how do we balance that? And that's where I think like HRV biofeedback is great, that you can both measure and stabilize or improve with the same science. But we got some language, I think, to develop in this middle ground of long-term sustainability and short-term performance. How do we find a middle ground there that supports both? And that's going to be a challenge for us for sure.
Sure. Well, I mean, how do you keep something as a state and not a trait? I mean, how do you not allow your current state to ultimately affect you long term, even though you know that you've got to show up for whatever it is you got to show up for?
And how do you balance
I think that's
that?
what everybody wants, right? I mean, everybody understands, look, I can't just use this biometric to determine every single day of my life.
Right.
But I need to better understand the trends and when I need to make lifestyle changes so that the trend doesn't become my new reality.
Yeah. And we've been both successful because we bust our butt, right? We show up. We show up.
Yep.
We show up early for meetings.
I've had a lot of red days with 2 little kids in the house.
Exactly. Sure. You show up. My wife needs me for like 45 minutes to have a conversation with every day. I watch you parent. Like that to me seems like another full-time job, if not more. Like, so
Yeah,
like,
it is for
but
sure.
how do you balance all that? Then still show up to work. And then, how do you take these good lessons and the mentality is, yeah, I'm gonna nail this project or this presentation, long-term sustainability versus short-term performance and a champion mindset in all of that. It's just an area I think there's a lot to talk about and moving forward. Again, I think we're hitting it in athletics, and I don't know if we know really how to talk about it, because we want Kawhi Leonard to play because he played hurt and scored 35 points in a game, and then he was hurt. And I'm not going to say Kawhi Leonard should have played. That's not my place to do. But how do we balance that in our own minds? Because if we can't think about that in any way, how do we balance that? Is every sports league now going to cut back on regular season games by half or something like that? How do you do that? And that's I think where we're going to be doing a lot of exploration. Our supplements can help. It can diet help, and
of course,
can you go out, have 4 or 5 drinks after a game to celebrate? Maybe. I don't know. And because we don't do any of that anymore, does that hurt us in a way? I don't know. I think there's a lot of question marks here to consider. So both for our professional athletes and our high performers and whatever, high performing parents, high performing workforce, those sort of things. Questions to be continued, so to speak.
That's it. I'm looking forward to it. Always interesting. So, as we kind of wrap up here, hit our milestone. Obviously, you mentioned there's many more to come. Maybe you can share your plans and goals for where we're going to take the podcast and, sort of HRV community that we're so ingrained in.
Yeah. So, just keep listening. I know we got a couple more episodes of the book series to get out there. So this is a little bit of a breather. I think we got 2 more episodes left. So it's been so much fun to explore that with Dave and Ina. And so if you're just jumping in here, hopefully this was a great episode to kind of be introduced to. Really encourage you to go back to episode 1 of the Heartbeat of Business series, if not episode 1 of the entire podcast, that you can kind of pick and choose moving forward. But I've got a lot of great interviews already recorded, Jeff. So it's a real easy question to answer. Is I got them. It's because as we've been doing this series for several months now, I've been just keeping recording. People reaching out to us now, which is really exciting. So as we get connected to more and more people through our work with Optimal, it's just a platform too for people to come on and say, okay, what are you doing with heart rate variability? Where are you using our app or not? Getting these thinkers on that are using HRV to answer these questions, to improve people's health, to improve people's performance, is just exciting, because we need to learn from people working with a vastly different populations. We have everybody from high performers already recorded to a great episode with somebody doing this with folks experiencing homelessness. So I think to continue to hopefully provide that spectrum, because, learning what works with folks who are experiencing the most stress and trauma in our society, even somebody that goal is to perform high in athletic, can learn from how do we help those folks with HRV biofeedback, and vice versa as well. So, really hoping, Jeff, to bring a lot of different voices, perspectives to do it. And I can say that with a lot of confidence because I know who the guests are coming up, and they're really good. So Jeff,
that's exciting.
Yeah, I just want to thank you for joining me. This has been fun to go a little old school for this episode. I kind of logged in and realized, we did 99 last week. We gotta do this. So I appreciate you jumping on.
Absolutely, it's a pleasure to be back, and really really just appreciative of all the people that are paying attention, that are listening, that are supporting us, and really excited to see where we take not only the podcast, but the app and the products and the company as well. So thank you, Matt, for being the consistent rock and the one getting out such interesting podcast content. I know that all of our listeners and the community around us really appreciate it.
Thank you so much. And as always, you can find show notes, information, sign up for our email list. I am doing a little bit more, going to start blogging more as well. OptimalHRB.com, you can find all that, and always feel free to reach out to us as well, and just appreciate you all. We wouldn't be doing this if nobody listened, and it's great to see every time I check in on the analytics, which I try not to do too often, but I check in because I'm too busy to check in very often. People are listening, so without you, we probably still wouldn't be doing this. I just want to thank everybody who's been on this journey with us. And if you're new to the journey, welcome aboard. I'm excited for the next 100 episodes.
Exactly. Thanks, everybody.